Hey, hi everyone. So it's just your friendly neighborhood advisor, Matt. So today, actually, I just wanted to talk a little bit on personal cash flow 101. And this topic may seem pretty basic, but it's actually the simple things that could make or break our finances. My belief is that financial planning should be easy. It should be easy to understand. It should not feel like a daunting task or overly complicated. And having a good cash flow is the foundation for having well managed finances. So let's get into personal cash flow 101 and what all this is about. Okay, let's get into it. I think the first thing we want to talk about is income versus cash flow. Having a positive cash flow means you have more money coming in than going out. So let's define the definition of income. Income is money that you earn. For example, it could be from your salary, side jobs, business income, or even your investments. And what is cash flow? Cash flow is actually the money that you have available after all your expenses. And of course, there are going to be months where your expenses are much higher, especially if there are bigger ticket items like you're booking an air ticket for a vacation or a wedding, a home deposit, can be a huge amount. So what's the aim? The aim is to actually have a more positive than negative cash flow over a period of time. So income minus expenses equals cash flow. But if you're constantly negative cash flow every month, every single month, then it could possibly mean you may be overspending. So something to look out for. I think the first thing we need to talk about is why is cash flow important? For example, your cash flow is like your heartbeat. If your heart stops beating, we die. So similarly, if our cash flow actually stops, it would mean either we have stopped earning an income or expenses is so high there's nothing left to save every month. And the whole point of cash flow is actually to help to cover your daily expenses. And one of the positive things about a good cash flow is it lets you feel good. It lets you have that assurance that you're managing your finances well. It gives you some peace of mind, a sense of security. And it also gives you options. So after setting aside your emergency fund, which normally I would recommend about 3 to 6 months of your income as an emergency fund, you now have excess cash flow or savings that you can use to grow your savings ahead of the bank rate. But on the other hand, what happens if you have negative cash flow? So negative cash flow can lead to bad debt, meaning you may have to constantly borrow money or put it on credit cards just to pay off some of your expenses. And besides, also take note that the very high interest that credit card companies can charge you, it's a lot of money. And I think the worst thing that can happen with a negative cash flow is the intangible stress it can cause. So for example, living paycheck to paycheck, it puts a lot of strain on family relationships. Husbands and wives can get into arguments over money. Friendships can also get broken if you borrow money and you're not able to pay back due to poor cash flow. So just take note of this. Let's talk about income versus cash flow. Does a high income equals to a good cash flow? So having a high income basically shows the value that you bring to the company or the value that your business offers to other customers. So who has a better cash flow? Let's take a look at two examples. So in example A, John is earning an income of $5,000, but his expenses is $4,008, meaning his cash flow is only $200. But in example B, we can see that Tom, his income is $3,000, but his expenses is only $2K, which leaves him a cash flow of $1,000. So in this example, Tom actually has a much higher cash flow compared to John, even though John is earning more. So we all desire to have a higher income. Let's just face it. Let's accept that it's part of human nature and we all want the best for ourselves, right? And a higher income actually gives us more options to do the things we enjoy. But it can also lead to lifestyle inflation. So what is that? As income increases, our expenses also start to increase along with our income. For example, as our income increases, we start to look at upgrading our car, we start to look at upgrading our house, or even upgrading our phone, or buying new shiny things that you probably wouldn't normally buy before your income increase. So if your expenses continue to increase, even as your income increases, then your cash flow is actually not improving that much, meaning that a person that's earning lesser than you could be saving a lot more. So the moral of the story here is a high income does not equal to a high cash flow. Let's end off this part with a quote. Income is vanity, cash flow is sanity, and cash is king. So what does this all mean? So income is vanity. It looks good. Having a high income looks good. It feels good. It's a nice number to see. Cash flow is sanity. It gives you that peace of mind knowing that you have a positive cash flow every month, you have surplus every month. And cash is king. It means that it's not how much you earn, but how much you're actually able to save. A few things that can lead to poor cash flow management. What leads to poor cash flow management? So, for example, there's a few things. High living expenses. So, things are definitely getting more expensive every year. That's the reality. Inflation is real. So, compared to 30 years ago, remember McDonald's value meal used to be about $3 for a value meal. Today, that same value meal is around $7 to $9. And you're gonna be we all need to spend on things like food, transport, and then even parents with young children also have to spend a bit more. So for me personally, I don't drive, so I do save quite a bit from not owning a car in Singapore. I mostly use ride-hailing services or public transport to get around, so that's quite a bit of savings right there. And the second thing is debt repayments. In Singapore, property is one of our biggest assets, and most of us will actually take a loan to pay for a property in Singapore. And if we don't manage this well, it can actually lead to being one of our biggest outflows every month, especially if we are purchasing a property beyond our actual means. And then end up we have to service a huge loan every month. It can be quite stressful. The third thing is high discretionary spending. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with treating ourselves to vacations with our family. Going out on overseas trips is part of enjoying life and seeing new things. But we just have to make sure that when we are going about with our spending, we don't overspend. And I think the last two items is there's a bad habit of living paycheck to paycheck. That means some people they just keep spending and spending every month. They don't really have a good habit of learning how to save. And the last thing is irregular income. For example, people like myself, freelance workers, our income is variable. It's not the same every single month. And if you don't manage your expenses properly, it can lead to poor cash flow. Let's take a look at this example as a freelancer and a self-employed individuals. So for example, Maria has a freelance income, and her month one income is, let's say, about $6,000. Her month two income is $2,000, and her month three income is $3,000. But her expenses stays the same at $3,000 every month. So what this means is that her cash flow for month one is only $3,000. She has a positive cash flow of $3,000. Great. Her month two cash flow is actually negative, and her month three cash flow it's neutral, is net off. So the challenge is in this example is that income may not be consistent every month. So one of the tips that I can share is to ideally build a buffer fund. It's called an emergency fund, ideally between 3 to 6 months of income, so that in months that you have negative cash flow, you can always rely on your buffer fund to stay afloat or to support you instead of having to borrow money. One of the ways that I use to track my cash flow is this is what I call a sample cash flow template that I use for myself. I basically write everything down on my expenses, my income, all on this Excel spreadsheet that I created for myself. So different people have different ways to track their own expenses as well as their income. Some use very budgeting apps, or some a little bit more old school like myself, just use a simple Excel file and then just track it a bit more manual. What I do is I only track this monthly. So every month, I will actually spend around 30 minutes to about 40 minutes just to look through some of my credit card statements, my bank accounts, the balance, just tabulate everything up neatly. So in my mind, I have a very clear idea of where my money is going. I feel that if you do this daily, it's a little bit too overwhelming, and over time you get burnout. So tracking your lunch expenses every day can get really tiring. So every month, usually I'll spend about 30-40 minutes, all right, just looking through my income, what are some of the expenses from my credit card, whether I withdraw any money that month, my bills, my town council payments, insurance premiums, my taxes that I have to pay to IRAS, love gifts that I give to my parents and to church, and also my MediSave contribution as a self-employed individual. So end of every year, what I'll do is I will just review the entire table or the entire chart just to see what are the areas I can possibly improve on or cut down so that going forward for the next year, my cash flow is in a much better position. One question that I do get is, how do I improve our cash flow? How do we improve my cash flow? So my answer is learn how to manage your wants. So too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't need to impress people who don't care. And that's just the reality of the world we live in, where everything is just trying to grab our attention. Buy this now, sign up for this now, while stocks last, limited time offer, promotion ends today. And I feel that it's perfectly normal to reward yourself, but do so prudently within your own means. So I think that one of the things that the world tries to create is a desire to always want more, and it's never enough. So one of the things that affect cash flow quite a bit is high ticket items. So what's a high ticket item? So for example, ask yourself, is it worth owning a car if you're a couple or just a very small family of three? Is it worth shelling out that 100k to 200k just to move a few people around? Again, nothing wrong with treating yourself, but ask yourself, do you need that designer bag or watch which costs $10,000? Are you stretching yourself a little bit too thin just to own that latest iPhone 16? So one advice I can give is instant gratification versus delayed gratification. So things always look better on social media compared to real life, the real life versus real life. So every time you see something nice, you want to buy it, your impulsive emotional buying kicks in. My suggestion is wait about 48 hours, sleep over it. If after 2 days you still really want it, sure, go ahead and get it, but make sure you do your research. And my point here is not to make impulsive decisions or feel like you're missing out. So by doing that, you realize that you're able to start managing your wants, your desires a lot better. How do we improve our cash flow? Budget 101. Again, this is a very general rule of thumb. Everyone's situation is very different. So this rule, the 50-30-20 rule of thumb, means that ideally, in an ideal scenario, 50% of your income is spent on your needs. For example, things like your home loan, your utilities, groceries, things that are non-negotiables, you have to pay them every month. 30% of your income goes to wants. For example, things like vacation, entertainment, things that you enjoy buying to treat yourself. And the last 20% is savings. For example, going into an emergency fund in your bank savings account, or if you have surplus, you can also choose to invest this amount. So let's use this example, the 50-30-20 rule. If let's say supposing your monthly income is $4,000, ideal scenario is that 2,000 goes to needs. Another 1,002, all right, can go to wants, is 30%, and the balance 800 you can actually look at saving it. So 1 year result is that if you save for 1 year 800 a month, you have $9,600 saved up. Not too bad. But if you keep doing this for 5 years, 800 a month, you have saved up almost 48,000, which is close to $50,000. That is quite a substantial amount just by having a consistent habit of saving $800 a month. So again, this is a general rule of thumb. Everyone's situation is different. A couple with 3 kids may have 70% of their expenses going to household needs. So their expenses here would be different. And only 30% balance for wants and savings. But however, I would still suggest, having some savings is better than having nothing at all. I like this quote a lot by Ryan Reynolds. It's from a show called The Hitman's Bodyguard. Boring is best. So what does this mean? So in this show, Ryan Reynolds actually works as a bodyguard protecting VIPs, and it's really boring. If it's boring, it's good. It means that no one died on his watch, no one got injured. So his motto is boring is best. So similarly, the boring things could be the right thing to do. For example, who is actually wealthier in this scenario? Think about it. Someone who spends first, then saves the balance, or someone who saves first, then spend. And one of the best ways to actually develop a good saving habit is learning how to automate your savings by instilling a false sense of discipline, where you don't even get a chance to spend the money. Sounds a bit boring, but automating your savings is one of the best ways to build a good habit. So you can't spend what you don't have, right? If it's already been transferred out. So one tip is you can actually create an account, a bank account solely for saving, set up a standing instruction. So every month when your income comes in, a portion is automatically transferred out so you do not spend it by accident. And as you see this savings account grow, it can also give you a sense of satisfaction to know that you are also on the right track. When people mention the word budget, what does it mean exactly? It's very simple. I think we don't have to overcomplicate this. Budget is basically a tool to tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. It means that you instill a discipline into setting aside a certain amount every month before you spend it. Let's look at some debt management tips. And I think one of the things we do need to be mindful of is always prioritize high interest debt first. So in this example, credit card payments are one of the interest rates that charges you the highest interest and can amount to almost 30% in a single year. That is completely ridiculous. So learn to pay off the debt first that charges you the highest interest. If you keep piling up debt on credit, you may end up having to repay the interest charges every month instead of actually reducing your principal amount that you owe. And it can take years to actually pay back credit card debt, so please don't fall into that trap. I think for me personally, this is my own experience, is less is more when it comes to credit card. I own one credit card for all my expenses. To me, I don't think it's worth the mental stress and energy trying to keep track of multiple cards. I understand that having different cards gives you access to different rebates, freebies, promotions, discounts, but you also do need to remember to actually waive off the annual fee for each card every year and make payments on time. All it takes is one late payment and then you're charged a late payment fee. So with one card, it's easy for me to keep track of my overall expenses too. It gives me that big picture view of how much I'm actually spending on my card every month. And one thing I do encourage is learn to automate your payments. Learn to set up gyro to avoid late fees and interest charges. So maybe for this portion, I can share a little bit a story with you guys. I actually got charged almost $600 for interest charges and another $100 for a late payment fee just in September last year. So what happens was I actually bought a big ticket item, air tickets, because I was going on vacation, and I transferred a large amount of money from my personal account to my joint account for my family. So when the credit card bill came in, they did a gyro deduction, and they only did it one time. There was no second deduction, no second chance at all, and I was only late for one day, and they charged me $700, close to $700 on late payment fee as well as interest charges. So it was a very painful experience. Thankfully, I called in to the bank and managed to waive it off because it's my first time missing the payment. But it gave me a lot of stress, and my wife was not very happy when that happened too. And learn to set calendar reminders. Make a recurring reminder in your calendar every time a large payment is due, so you don't forget. And lastly, fear of missing out. Avoid buying things you cannot afford with money you do not have. So I think these are the 4 debt management tips that I can share with you guys. So that brings us to the next question. How should I start? How can I have a better cash flow every month? I think the first thing is learn to start small. Make it a habit to save every month. So even a little bit of savings, $100 every month, might not seem a lot, but it adds up in the long run. And secondly, learn to automate some of your bills. Take away that mental stress. So put more bills on gyro. It helps you to reduce the stress of missing payments. You get charged late fees by the credit card companies, or worse, your insurance policies lapsing. So as an advisor, I've seen cases of important policies lapsing due to missed payments. Nowadays, companies actually send you a lot of notices by email. A lot of times it gets drowned out by other emails. You don't see it, you forget about it. They then send you SMS reminders, but again, it can be easy to overlook, or it may appear in your spam folder. So the next moment, the policy lapses and becomes very challenging to reinstate it. So even for myself, one experience I had, this was about two years ago, I actually put my son's personal accident insurance on my credit card. And when my card expired and changed, I forgot to update it with the insurance company, and then the policy lapsed. So when he fell down, he had an accident, he actually fell down, he had to be rushed, we had to rush him to the accident and emergency department at Sengkang General Hospital. I was shocked to realize I couldn't claim at all, since the policy was not even enforced. So a lesson learned for me is that by putting it on gyro, it actually helps to prevent such cases from happening, as long as you have sufficient funds in the bank account. Lastly, find suitable ways to invest and grow your savings ahead of the bank rate. Again, it's not how much money you make, but how much money you're able to keep. As we end, remember, managing your cash flow is like tending to a garden. You are the gardener in this example. Take time and effort to nurture it, to work on budgeting, to work on improving your cash flow every month, and over time you'll start to see good results. You feel a lot happier as well. As we end, thank you very much for watching this video. If you'd like to connect or find out more, you can actually scan the QR code to connect with my WhatsApp mobile number directly. Or you can also visit my webpage below, matthewsyo.com, to find out a little bit more of some of the services and some of the areas that I can possibly help you with. So thanks once again. Bye-bye.